Welcome students to the chapter number 11, Project Risk Management. Before that, we discussed about the different project risk management processes. Altogether, they are 7. And in our previous lectures, we have covered the first 4 processes. Now, this is the last part of this chapter, and we are starting from planning risk responses. We will cover implementing risk responses and last the monitoring risk. So before we start, we'll have a little recap about the risk. As per discussion, we already discussed that an uncertain event that if it occurs has a positive or negative effect on the project is identified as a risk. So risk can be of two types. Negative, if the effect is negative, we call it a threat, and if the effect is positive, we consider it as an opportunity, For example, if we invest in a stock, if it goes up, it's a positive risk, or but it goes down, then we say it's a negative risk or a threat. So let's start another process of risk management. It's a planning risk responses. The planning risk responses means defining the strategies and actions to address the project risks. So after identifying and quantifying risks, the organization must decide how to respond them. As we discussed that the risks can be positive and negative, so we have different strategies for both type of the risks. So first we talk about basic risk response strategies for negative risks or threats. Number 1, risk avoidance. Risk avoidance means eliminate the threat or protect the project from its impact. For example, use familiar technology than a risky technology that you do not know. Second is risk acceptance, which means acknowledge the risk and not take any action unless the risk occurs, and when it occurs, accept consequences of risk. We can take the example as a project team planning a big project review meeting could take an active approach to risk by having a contingency or backup plan and contingency reserves. So if the team cannot get approval for a specific meeting site, on the other hand, the team could take a passive approach and accept whatever facility the organization provides. The next is the risk transference, which means shift the impact of a threat to a third party. Example, responsibility of a hardware or software management transfer to a third party, such as a failed server. So you should focus on the core processes of your project, and the risk is transferred to the another party. Next strategy is the risk mitigation, which means reduce the probability of occurrence or impact of a risk. It involves users. We can mitigate by involving the users early in the process, uses of proven technology or competent staff. These all are some examples to mitigate the risk. Last is the risk escalation, which means notifying the higher level authority. So, girls, if the risk is outside of the scope of the project, or the proposed response is outside of the project manager's authority, it would make sense to escalate, to notify, to inform the risk to a higher level manager within the organization. Now here you can see this is the table from your book, table 11.6, which provides the journal mitigation strategies in 3 areas, like technical risks, cost risk, and the schedule risk on project. So you can note that increasing the frequency of the project monitoring, you can see here, and increase the project, frequency of the project monitoring, and the use of the work breakdown structure and critical path method CPM are the strategies you can see in all three areas, like increase the frequency of project monitoring, use work breakdown structure and CPM, use work breakdown structure and CPM. It is the part of all three types of the risks. So it means that increasing the frequency of these two components, like frequency of project monitoring and using a work breakdown structure and CPM, are the strategies for all three areas. Similarly, increasing the project manager's authority is also a strategy for is a very good strategy for mitigating the technical and the cost risks, and selecting the most experienced project manager is recommended for reducing the schedule risk. Also, improving communication is also an effective strategy for mitigating the risk, like improve problem handling and communication, improve communication and understanding. So it's also considered as an effective strategy for mitigating the project risks. Now, this slide shows us the response strategies for the positive risk. So the basic response strategies of the positive risk or opportunities are risk exploitation. Risk exploitation means eliminate the uncertainty by ensuring the opportunity definitely happens. So, for example, if you recall our opening case, so suppose that Cliff's company funded a project to provide new computer classroom for some school in need. So they might select one of their top project managers to organize news coverage of the project, write a press release, or hold some other public event to make sure that the project produces good public relations for the company. So which results, which could lead to more business for the Cliffs company. So this is the positive risk. The positive risk, as we discussed, that it means that to see the opportunities, right? Second is the risk sharing. Risk sharing means allocating the ownership of the risk to another party who is best able to capture the benefit. It means, using the same example of our opening case of implementing the new computer classrooms, the project manager could form a partnership with the school's principal, school board, or parent-teacher organization to share responsibility for achieving good public relations for the project. Also, on the other hand, the company might partner with a local training firm that agrees to provide free training for all of the teachers on how to use the new computer classrooms. Next strategy for the positive risk is the risk enhancement. Risk enhancement refers to increase the probability and or the positive impact of an opportunity by identifying and maximizing the key drivers of the positive risk. For example, an important driver of getting good public relations for the computer classrooms project might to be generate awareness and excitement about it among students, parents, and teachers. So these groups might then do their own formal or informal advertising of the project and Cliff's company, which in turn might interest other groups and generate more businesses. Last is the the next is the risk acceptance. Risk acceptance, as the name implies, it means to take advantage of the opportunity if it arises, but not actively pursue it. We can understand again with the help of the the same example of our opening case. Like, for example, the computer classrooms project manager might assume that the project will result in good public relations for the company, and he does not feel compelled to do anything extra, right? Last is the risk escalation, which means to notify a higher level authority. So in context of our example, we can analyze it. The computer classroom project manager might escalate the risk of the partnering with another firm to a higher level manager who may have more influence with the firm, and he himself can take care of all that. So these are the some of the positive, strategies to deal with the positive risks. Um, as I tell you that we have to be, take care of both kind of risks. So that's why we have the different strategies for dealing with both type of the risks. Now, but apart from this, we have two more type of risks you can see here in the slide. The secondary and the residual risks. Now, as the name implies, residual means remaining. So residual, the other risk, type of risk, which is residual and secondary, residual risk is the risk remaining after even you treat the risk, after you identify the risk, you are implementing, you are planning for that risk, but still some risk is remaining. So it is also very much important to identify residual and secondary risk. So residual risks are the risks that remain after all of the response strategies have been implemented. For example, even though a stable hardware product may have been used on a project, there may still be a risk that it fails to function properly. The second is another type of risk is the secondary risk, which means direct result of implementing a risk response. So simply we can say for the secondary risk, your response plan for a risk caused a new risk. So this new risk is known as a secondary risk. For example, using the more stable hardware may have caused a risk of peripheral devices failing to function properly, right? So this is all about the planning risk responses. Now we are moving to our another process, which is implementing risk responses. So implementing risk responses means putting risk responses plan into effect. So the main executing process performed as part of project risk management is implementing risk responses. The key outputs for this phase are the change requests and the project documents updates. For example, if go back to your opening case, the Cliffs team had identified the risk event of having a new customer. They listed several activities they could perform to help manage this risk, such as making sure the project manager took the time to understand the customer, setting up a meeting to go to get to know the customer and clarify the expectations, and having Cliffs attend the meetings. So in this case, the Cliffs team has proactive in identifying this risk and would take actions to prevent any negative event from happening by implementing their risk responses. Next, and the last process is monitoring risk. Monitoring risk means tracking existing risks and identifying and analyzing the new risks. So it involves ensuring the appropriate risk responses are performed, tracking identified risks, identifying and analyzing new risks, and evaluating effectiveness of risk management throughout the entire project. So, so project risk management does not stop with the initial risk analysis. Be- because over the time some risk may fade away, some continues, maybe some new risk arises, so it is important to monitor those risks. So carrying out the individual risk management plans involves monitoring risks based on defined milestones and making decisions regarding risks and their response strategies. So project teams sometimes use workarounds, which are unplanned responses to risk events and when they do not have contingency plans in place. So girls, what softwares we should use to assist in project risk management? In our previous lecture, we talked about the risk registers. So risk registers can be created in a simple Microsoft Word or Excel file. I showed you one example in Excel file or as a part of a sophisticated database. So more sophisticated risk management software such as Monte Carlo simulation tools help develop the models and use the simulations to analyze and respond to various risks. So some considerations for agile adaptive environments. All types of projects should share knowledge related to risk as quickly as possible and keep documents up to date. Risk is considered during each iteration for agile or adaptive projects, which does elevate its importance. Changing priorities can be addressed more easily by changing the product backlog for each iteration. So here is we are done with the chapter, and this is the chapter summary. So risk is an uncertainty that can have a negative or positive effect on meeting project objectives. Many organizations do a poor job of project risk management, if they do any at all. Successful organizations realize the value of good project risk management, and risk management is an investment which costs are associated with identifying risks, analyzing those risks, and establishing the plans to address them. So implementing risk responses involves putting the appropriate risk response plans into action. Monitoring risks involves monitoring implementation of risk response plans, tracking identified risks, identifying and analyzing new risks, and evaluating the effectiveness of risk management throughout the entire project. So here we are finished with our chapter.